Way, way before any history books were written, before there were empires or kings, humanity was already out there, shaping the world. We're going to rewind the clock all the way back to the very beginning, to this immense foundational period of time we call the Stone Age.
But first, just try to picture this for a second. Forget about grocery stores, restaurants, DoorDash. None of that existed. Every single day, your ability to eat, to survive, depended completely on what you could find or what you could catch. That was the absolute reality for early humans. And believe me, it shaped everything about their lives.
You know, it's easy to think of the Stone Age as this one long, boring stretch of time, but that's not it at all. It's really a story in 3 major acts, and each one came with its own incredible challenges and amazing innovations. We're going to journey through all of them: the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic.
Okay, so before we dive deep into this lost world, we got to get on the same page with a few key ideas that really define it. These aren't just vocabulary words. They're like the building blocks of prehistoric life.
First up is prehistoric, and all that really means is the time before writing. No books, no diaries, nothing like that. So this whole story is basically history told through objects. Everything we know, we've pieced together from clues they left behind. You know, sharpened tools, ancient bones, and those incredible cave paintings.
So why call it the Stone Age? Well, it's pretty straightforward, actually. Stone was the go-to material, the primary tech that early humans used to make all their essential tools and weapons. You could say it was the cutting-edge technology of its day.
And what were they doing with these stone tools? Well, for the most part, they were living the hunter-gatherer life. For most of human history, this was the job description. Your survival depended on hunting animals and gathering whatever wild plants, fruits, and veggies you could get your hands on.
Right. And if your dinner is constantly walking away from you, you can't exactly stay put, can you? That brings us to our next word, nomad. If your food source is always on the move, you have to move right along with it. A nomad is someone who travels from place to place, following the herds and the changing seasons, instead of settling down in one permanent spot.
All right, now that we've got the lingo down, let's jump into the first and honestly the biggest chapter of the Stone Age, the Paleolithic era. This was a time that was really defined by one huge theme: the raw, daily challenge of just surviving.
And when I say it was the longest era, I mean unbelievably long. We're talking about nearly 3 million years. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around that amount of time, but it covers the vast, vast majority of human existence on this planet.
So what was daily life like for, a few million years? Well, you'd be living in these small nomadic groups, always on the move as hunter-gatherers, tracking huge animal migrations. You'd survive using simple but really effective stone tools. But here's the part that's truly amazing. They also created the very first art we know of.
And this is the part that just blows my mind. Even when your entire day is about just not dying, people still had this deep, fundamental need to express themselves. These amazing cave paintings, which often show the animals that were so central to their lives, are like a direct window into their world and into their minds.
Okay, so after millions of years, things started to shift. The world itself began to change, and that forced people to change with it. This brings us to the Mesolithic, or the Middle Stone Age, an era that was all about tackling the challenge of change.
So that was the big question, right? How do you survive when the world you know is literally melting away? The climate was warming up, the massive glaciers from the Ice Age were retreating, the world their ancestors knew was just disappearing. The old tricks weren't going to be enough anymore.
So what do humans do? They adapt. They get creative. The old way was to follow those gigantic Ice Age herds. But as those animals started to disappear, a revolutionary new idea popped up. Why not domesticate animals? Tame them. That way you've got a much more reliable, controllable food source right there.
You can really think of this time as this crucial in-between period. It's the bridge from the old way of life to something totally new. It wasn't like flipping a switch. It was a slow, gradual shift. People were still hunting and gathering, sure, but they were also starting to experiment, taking the very first steps away from being purely nomadic.
And that bridge leads us straight into the final act of the Stone Age, the Neolithic era, the New Stone Age. And folks, this is where things get revolutionary. This period solved the massive challenge of how to support a growing population.
It all boiled down to one single idea, one innovation that changed literally everything: agriculture.
The discovery that you could plant seeds in the ground and grow your own food, well, that wasn't just a neat trick. It was a full-blown revolution that changed what it even meant to be human.
Just look at the difference here. This one shift completely flipped the script on human life. The nomadic lifestyle replaced by permanent villages. Instead of just chasing your food, you were now creating it by growing crops and raising animals. And that allowed those small roaming groups to become much larger, more complex, organized societies. And the ripple effects from this farming revolution, they were huge, absolutely massive. With a steady food supply, people settled down for good in permanent villages, and populations exploded. All those people in one place created a need for organization, so you see the very first government starting to form. And from there, the first real civilizations began to pop up, especially in a place called the Fertile Crescent, where the land was just perfect for farming.
So okay, that's a lot of ancient history, but why should you care? Because, and this is the key, everything we think of as civilization today, our cities, our tech, our societies, it's all built on the foundation that was laid way back in the Stone Age.
So, if you boil it all down, the whole story is a pretty clear three-step journey. It all started with the basics: survival, living in caves. Then came adaptation, figuring out how to deal with the changing world by building better homes. And that led to the final step, civilization, which was all made possible by farming and settling down in villages.
And really, that's the bottom line here. Every single major step, from the simplest stone tool to the massive idea of planting a seed, was a solution to a problem. And those solutions, stacked one on top of the other, laid the very foundation for everything that came next.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, humanity went from just trying to survive day to day to building entire civilizations. We've had the Industrial Revolution, the Digital Revolution. So the big question for us is, what's going to be the next revolution that changes everything all over again?